Hello students, welcome to the economics class. Today I will continue the same chapter of your microeconomics, which is consumers equilibrium through indifference curve analysis. In our previous class we have discussed about the concept of indifference curve and as well as its properties. Today we will discuss about the budget of the consumer. Budget constraints limit an individual's ability to consume in light of the prices that they must pay for various goods and services. And what is budget line or price line? This shows all possible combinations of two goods that the consumer can buy if he spends the whole of his given sum of money on his purchases at the given prices. Now we will understand this budget constraint and budget line with the help of a diagram as well as a tabular presentation. See this table, there are two goods, apple and oranges. Price of apple is rupees 6 per unit and price of oranges is rupees 2 per unit. And our budget is rupees 24. These are the various combinations of two goods, that means A, B, C, D, E. Consider this combination A. The number of apple is 0 and number of oranges is 12. Now, if we multiply 0 by 6, that means 0, and 12 into 2, that means 24. So, adding this 24 plus 0, that means rupees 24. So, this is our budget. Now, consider the combination B. Number of apple is 1 and number of oranges are 9. 1 into 6, that means 6. 9 into 2, that means 18. If we add this to 18 plus 6, that means 24. Which is again our budget. So in all of these combinations we can see that consumer have to purchase the two goods in such a way so that it fulfills our budget or it lies within the budget, but it should not exceed the budget. Now see in the graph we have considered apple in the x-axis and oranges in the y-axis. This is the combination A where number of apple is 0 and number of oranges is 12. This is combination B, C, D and E. If we join all of these points, we can get a line which is known as budget line or price line. Now budget line divides these two parts. This part is known as the attainable set or attainable area or attainable region or feasible region. And this portion is known as unattainable region. So this is the concept of the budget line. Now what is the slope of the budget line? See here that within the budget, if a consumer wants to buy one more apple, he has to sacrifice 3 oranges. So what is the slope? Delta oranges by delta apples. That means minus 3 by 1. This is the slope. The slope is the negative of the ratio of the prices of two goods. The slope indicates the rate at which the two goods can be substituted without changing the amount of money spent. Now, budget line can shift if we consider that income of the consumer changes, whereas the price of two goods remains constant. See in this graph, AB is the budget line. If income of the consumer rises, remaining the price of two goods constant, the budget line will shift forward. It will become CD. And if the opposite happens, that means if the income of the consumer reduces, where prices of two goods remains constant, the budget line will shift backward position. That means at the position EF. So in this way, budget line or price line can shift. Now, this price line or budget line can also rotate. How? Consider that income of the consumer remains unchanged. Price of one commodity also remains constant, but the price of other commodity changes. See here in this graph, we consider that the price of orange remains constant and price of apples falls. What consumer will do? He will purchase more apple whereas he will purchase the same amount of orange. So previously our budget line was AB, but it will shift now at the position of AC. Now if opposite happens, that means price of apples remains constant and the price of oranges remains, or it changes. So what will happen? The opposite thing will happen exactly. So in this way, the price line can rotate starting from the x-axis. Now what is consumer's equilibrium? Consumers choose a combination of goods that will maximize the satisfaction they can achieve, given the limited budget available to them. The maximizing combination must satisfy two conditions. Number one, it must be located on the budget line. Secondly, it must give the consumer the most preferred combination of two goods and services. Condition number one for the consumer's equilibrium is budget line should be tangent to the indifference curve. See in this graph, point E, this is a combination of two goods, but this is not an equilibrium point of the consumer. Why? Because the combination E cannot be attained due to the budget constraints, because the point E lie in the unattainable, or this is not in the feasible portion of the budget line. This comes in the unattainable region of the budget line. So E is not an equilibrium point of the consumer. In this graph, point B, this point B does not maximize the satisfaction because there exists point C, which is attainable and yields a higher satisfaction. So point B is a tangency point between IC and budget line, but this is not an equilibrium point. Now consider this graph. There are 4 ICs, IC1, IC2, IC3 and IC4. Equilibrium occurs at point C when the consumer selects a combination which reaches the highest attainable indifference curve. At point C, or at equilibrium point, we have the slope of the indifference curve which is equal to the slope of the budget line. So this is the condition of the consumer's equilibrium. The slope of the budget line should be equal to the slope of the indifference curve. Condition 2 for consumer's equilibrium is indifference curve must be convex to the origin. In this graph, we have considered a concave indifference curve. This is also a tangency point between indifference curve and budget line, but this combination E is not an equilibrium point because MRS will be increasing at point E, whereas it should be diminishing at equilibrium point. So this was the whole concept of the consumer's equilibrium through indifference curve analysis. Hope all of you have understood well. Thank you.